MrBeast, the famed YouTuber and bona fide billionaire, is slammed with a scathing lawsuit, alleging he wrongfully terminated one of his employees when she returned from maternity leave. She alleges the MrBeast work environment is so toxic, she was forced to work while in labor in the delivery room. And that's just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to shocking allegations. This is Scandal, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Gillespie. He is arguably the biggest creator on the planet. 479 million followers, Super Bowl ads, a reality show on Amazon Prime, Jimmy MrBeast Donaldson, the guy who gives away private islands for clicks, who offered to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to any grocery store shopper who could stay inside a store for the longest amount of time. Oh, and he also, according to him, purchased the grocery store. But today, we're not talking about his latest stunt. No, we're here to talk about something much more serious. We're talking about a federal lawsuit filed just days ago against the content creator. The allegations inside, they paint a picture of MrBeast that, if true, his fans have never seen before. So buckle up. A former female executive of his is suing him, claiming that she was demoted after she complained about workplace harassment. She's also claiming she was forced to work while in active labor. Oh, and she mentions this handbook. She says employees were given it, and it says, and I'm quoting this directly, quote, "No does not mean no." MrBeast is denying everything, but this isn't just a he said, she said. This is a 20-plus page filing. So how serious is all of this? And what could happen if you take the biggest influencer in the world to court? Well, let's find out. So MrBeast has more subscribers than the population of Germany, and he is, by the numbers, likely one of the most successful creators in the current digital age. He was just honored, in fact, as one of Time magazine's most influential people. For years, the story was simple. MrBeast does crazy stunts, MrBeast gives away money, MrBeast is a good guy, but now there's another story, one that's been building in the background. In 2024, the New York Times reported that former contestants on his Beast game show sued, alleging dangerous conditions, lack of food, and medical neglect. That case, by the way, is still pending. And if you're not familiar with the show, basically, 1,000 people compete in crazy physical challenges, and the last one standing wins $5 million. Then, according to the Associated Press, allegations came that a longtime collaborator shared inappropriate messages with minors. Now, MrBeast had reportedly sent a memo to staff back in August of 2024, promising that he would create a culture that makes all our employees feel safe and allows them to do their best work. But now, a new lawsuit was filed on April 22nd in the Eastern District of North Carolina by a woman who says she was a former executive, Lorraine Mavromatis. Now, she's suing two of his companies, MrBeast YouTube LLC and Game Changer 24/7 LLC. According to the complaint, she's suing for FMLA violations, wrongful discharge, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Now, Lorraine says she was hired by MrBeast back in August of 2022 as the head of Instagram. And within her first year with the company, she was promoted twice. First to head of creative and then to COO of verticals. Now, that meant she was running a team of about 20 people, managing a monthly budget of $500,000. She says she even had a private office. She reported directly to the CEO. On the rise, perhaps? But then, according to Lorraine, she ended up walking into a culture no one warned her about. According to the lawsuit, MrBeast did not have a standard employee handbook with basic policies. Instead, the company distributed a document titled How to Succeed in MrBeast Production. Now, the handbook allegedly included sections like, "It's okay for the boys to be childish," and I quote, "Do everything you can to empower the boys when filming." The lawsuit also claims the handbook said no does not mean no, and the amount of hours you work is irrelevant. Lorraine says this was the culture at Beast Industries, and for women in the office, she says it created a toxic, demeaning environment where complaints were dismissed and bad behavior was excused. According to the lawsuit, the harassment started early and came right from the top. Lorraine says the company's former CEO, James Warren, who, by the way, is Jimmy Donaldson's cousin, subjected her to sexual harassment. She says he forced one-on-one meetings at his private home in an upstairs, dimly lit room while commenting on the way she looked in her clothes. But it gets stranger than that. She asked Warren why Mr. Beast wouldn't work with her on certain projects. And here's where the lawsuit alleges Warren told her, quote, Jimmy gets really awkward around beautiful women. Let's just say that when you're around and he goes to the restroom, he's not actually using the restroom. Regarding bathroom trips, the company actually called this claim fabricated. They said Mr. Beast's trips to the bathroom are actually due to Crohn's disease. And as a matter of fact, they had a lot more to say, which, by the way, we're going to get into all of that. But Lorraine says the alleged comment had a deeper impact on her. She says she started to wear baggy clothes and baseball caps to work just so that her looks wouldn't negatively impact her or affect her employment. The lawsuit also describes other allegations of demeaning treatment. She says Mr. Beast asked her to fetch him a beer before he would do a video, shooting a video, something she never saw him ask another male colleague. She says a male colleague told her to shut up and stop talking during a staff meeting when she asked a question. She also says that when she complained about a wealthy male client who was making unwanted romantic advances, that Warren told her she should be honored that a billionaire client was, quote, hitting on her. So in November of 2023, Lorraine says she reached a tipping point. She made a formal complaint to Human Resources. And guess who she says was running HR? Jimmy Donaldson's mother, Susan Perisher. According to the lawsuit, Lorraine detailed her claims of sexually inappropriate encounters, the harassment, the demeaning treatment. She says Perisher told her the complaint would be thoroughly investigated and that she would take care of the matter. But 2 months later, in January of 2024, the investigation came back, and according to Lorraine, her claims were found to be unsubstantiated. And so on that same day, January 23rd, 2024, allegedly, she was demoted and transferred. So that meant she went from COO of Verticals, an executive role with a private office, 20 direct reports, and a $500,000 budget, to social media manager for the merchandise division. The lawsuit says she was sent to work remotely at home. She didn't have an office anymore. She supervised no one and barely interacted with any executives. The complaint says Mr. Beast employees called this division, quote, where careers go to die. And if all of this wasn't shocking enough, wait until you hear what she says happened when she got pregnant. We're now in January 2025. Lorraine told her supervisor she was pregnant and would need to leave for the birth of her child. According to the lawsuit, Mr. Beast did not provide her with any written notice of her rights under the Family and Medical Leave Act. No eligibility notice, no designation notice, no nothing. On March 31st, 2025, she gave birth. She claims it was a pretty difficult delivery and her baby needed some time in the neonatal intensive care unit. But according to the complaint, Mr. Beast did not let her rest. She says her supervisor asked her to work on a product launch just days after giving birth. She says she was asked to stand for 10 hours at an exhibition booth 3 weeks postpartum. She was sent to Brazil for a video shoot. Now, Lorraine told the Associated Press in an interview, I was still bleeding and I just had to show up. According to the complaint, she was on a work conference call while in the labor and delivery room. She says she was afraid that if she refused to work, she would lose her job. But unfortunately for her, on November 6th, 2025, less than 3 weeks after Lorraine returned full-time from her FMLA leave, she claims Mr. Beast terminated her. According to the lawsuit, she was told her position was being eliminated, but also that she was too high caliber for the role she had been demoted to. But instead of offering her another position, she says the company offered her a severance agreement. According to the lawsuit, they tried to leverage medical coverage for her newborn to coerce her into signing away her legal claims. She says she refused. And according to the complaint, Mr. Beast posted a job opening for a social media content manager around the time of her termination. She says she was not offered the role or even a chance to apply, and that the company ended up filling this position with a man in early 2026. Now, we reached out to Lorraine for a comment. She didn't get back to us, but MrBeast's team is speaking out. A spokesperson for Beast Industries said, quote, "This clout-chasing complaint is built on deliberate misrepresentations and categorically false statements, and we have the receipts to prove it. There is extensive evidence, including Slack and WhatsApp messages, company documents, and witness testimony that unequivocally refutes her claims. We will not submit to opportunistic lawyers looking to manufacture a payday from us." The company also specifically addressed the alleged bathroom comment from James Warren, calling it ridiculous. This is an allegation fabricated for the sole purpose of sparking headlines. It's also disgusting that the lawsuit is exploiting Jimmy's eye condition and Crohn's disease to medical conditions he has been publicly open about. On the demotion claim, the company called it false and inaccurate. On the FMLA notice allegation, the company shared a screenshot of her signature confirming receipt of the employee handbook, including FMLA policies. And on the termination, the spokesperson said Lorraine was not fired, that her role was eliminated alongside others amid a company-wide restructuring. All right, so we walked you through the entire lawsuit, and now I want to dive a little deeper, break it all down with an expert. So let's bring him on. It's a friend of the show, entertainment and employee attorney Cameron Dolan-Shahi. Thank you so much, Cameron, for coming on with us today. And I mean, there's so many avenues I could go down with this lawsuit. What are just your initial thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, there's been a culture at the company seemingly of hostility towards employees, hard driving, results oriented, which is not atypical of startups and successful founders. But obviously, there's a line, and that line is the law, and federal law in this case.
Some of these allegations, too, are truly egregious. The plaintiff who's filing this lawsuit, she alleges that she had to work, while she's very pregnant up until when she's in the delivery room, which I've never given birth, but word on the street, it's not super easy to do. Yeah. It probably, takes a lot out of you, as, it does. But for her to be working while she is literally in labor, I mean, what do you make of that allegation?
I mean, the law specifically protects pregnant women, as it should. Women that take FMLA leave, the Family Medical Leave Act, it's specifically designed for this. As a society, we would want to protect our mothers, our expecting mothers. And so to jeopardize the health of a woman and her baby is egregious, to say the least.
And, honestly, just to be completely frank with you, I'm at the age thinking about maybe having kids. And this is something that a lot of my peers, other women, have to think about, too. How is this going to affect work? Yes, legally, I'm allowed to take off for maternity leave, whatever it may be, about 3 months. But then after that, will my job be waiting for me? And yes, it should be. But I mean, in this case, she says that after a couple of weeks, she came back and her job was kind of deleted, taken away. She was fired completely. So can you kind of explain how that works? I mean, your job should be safe if you're on maternity leave, right?
Correct. Under FMLA, you get 12 weeks unpaid, and you're protected for some time after that, which is what a lot of people don't know. If you have some sort of complications or medical issues, the employer is supposed to accommodate you. And if they don't, that's a violation of the Fair Employment and Housing Act, FEHA. So there's multiple protections for people, and I know it's scary potentially to have your job taken away, but as a plaintiff's attorney, I want to give reassurance to people out there that there are a lot of us, for better or worse, and willing to represent people who have been harmed by their employer.
Because it truly shouldn't be something on the mind of a new mother. She should be focusing on her recovery, number
Absolutely.
one, and then the life of her baby too. Exactly. So work, I mean, yes, work is very important and it's an identity for a lot of us. And, by the looks of it, she had a pretty cool job, but based on the allegations she has, the toxicity in the work environment, again, all allegations, it doesn't sound super great. So what do you think about her claims? I mean, do you think that she has a pretty strong case here?
I do. Getting fired 3 weeks after you come back and being forced to work without any sort of accommodations is pretty egregious. So she'll be able to point to the timing, what we call the temporal proximity between her termination and when she gave birth, as well as what we like to call Me Too evidence, which is evidence of other hostile work environment claims against the company to show some context and some color as to what was going on at MrBeast's company.
Okay, now you're opening the door to a whole other set of allegations that she's brought forth. And by the way, these aren't the first time that we've heard anything like that. Kind of the Mr. Beast culture there have been some rumors about kind of what happened. And in this lawsuit, she straight up says, this is a boys club. This is, I'm a woman, a female who worked here, but it kind of was leaning more toward the guys, guys being guys. Oh, no doesn't really mean no kind of thing.
Right.
And so does that do a good job of showing a pattern of, I guess, a toxic workplace?
Absolutely. These cultures are prevalent, often in the tech industries, video game industries, and now you see in social media industries, where they're led by young male founders who unfortunately don't have the experience and wisdom to properly care for their employees, and especially women in this case. There's a mentality for many startups and people of that generation. It's break stuff and apologize later, right? And so unfortunately for them, and fortunately for the employees, there is a line there. And so employees shouldn't be scared to exercise their rights and find lawyers when they think, their rights have been violated.
I think it's just so tough because when you tie in something like work, for a lot of people, for myself included, it is our identity. Yeah. It's what we like to do. We went to school for this. We got the job. It's great. But now, we need to pay bills. If this woman had a child, she has to provide for her. Okay, I need to make money from this company. So kind of feeling scared to speak up. Is that something you ever run into?
All the time. All the time. I have to reassure clients all the time who are very, very fearful. Luckily, at least in California, we have significant verdicts and judgments against these companies, for 10x or high multipliers of their salaries. So yes, it's a temporary serious nuisance not to have that income come in, but potentially you could have a lot more coming in damages if you have a good lawyer representing you.
And there's a lot going on here, too. We have the whole issue with she shouldn't have been fired or let go just a couple of weeks after she gave birth and she had her maternity leave. That, based on everything you're saying, was protected within her rights as an American. But on top of that, what we were talking about, some of the other things that she mentioned, the so-called boys club, the alleged sexual harassment that had been there, too. Does that do a good job of establishing a pattern of abuse? If we also include, I guess, some of the sexual things that seem kind of inappropriate, we mentioned them in our episode here today, does that help her case?
Yeah, the court and the jury are going to look at a totality of all the facts. So not one single thing is enough, I would say, for her, but taken together and probably with additional witness testimony, it could be. And what's going to be most important in this case, as is in every harassment or discrimination case, is the plaintiff's credibility versus the likability or dislikability of Mr. Beast in this case. And that'll be up to the jury.
It's tricky, right? Because Mr. Beast is really beloved. I mean, millions of subscribers on YouTube. There's, he has the show on Amazon. People really like him. And to your point, we have people who are up and coming like Mr. Beast who make this content that is really cool. Obviously, a lot of people are liking it. They're getting the views. Everything is great, but maybe not necessarily do they have the, I guess, schooling or education or, institutional knowledge of how to run a company, because according to the plaintiff in this allegations, there was a handbook that had kind of bizarre things written in it. And I'm just paraphrasing here, but some of the things were like, the amount of hours you work is irrelevant. No doesn't really mean no. If she is able to bring forward, screenshots or even the physical handbook, let's say, if she actually has it, is that also, pretty damning evidence?
Absolutely. The first thing we do when we take on a case is we ask for the personnel file and payroll records, which the employer has to provide, at least in California law, in 30 days. And they provide the employee handbook. And we look at the policies and we see, are these policies compliant with the law? So just those statements alone might not necessarily make the policies non-compliant, but they certainly provide the color and context to what she was going through in the boys club.
One of the next questions I have for all of this, too, is why was it in federal court? Can you explain that to me? Yeah,
federal court is a speedier forum. You have better judges, I would say, who are obviously in state court. They're excellent judges as well, but in federal court, you have those who are elected by presidents, and as well as the fact that there's what we call diversity of jurisdiction between the incorporation of where the company is. And where the plaintiff's from. If they're from different states, that'll ultimately end up in federal court anyways. As a plaintiff, typically you do want it in state court, so it is an interesting move, but it signals some confidence, I would say, by the plaintiff to affirmatively put the case in federal court.
Okay, and honestly, she does seem pretty confident to come forth with these allegations. I mean, even yesterday I did this story. There's this ongoing lawsuit with Kylie Jenner, a civil lawsuit. And I read through the lawsuit and I was like, honestly, the allegations against Kylie as an individual, as she's listed as a defendant, kind of flimsy.
Right,
But what I'm
not
going
non-existent almost. Yeah.
Exactly. When I was going through it, I was like, wait, what's going on? But this one, a little bit different. She's got the receipt. She's got,
Yeah.
XYZ day. She really has it there in black and white. So the confidence there. And I guess to your point, we talked about maybe past issues of alleged misconduct, other people who have been within the MrBeast Corporation and have worked there. If they can kind of come together, does that help the case? Do you think that's something that her attorneys are speaking to other former or even current employees?
Absolutely. And that would happen even before they would even retain the client, just to do their own investigation of whether this is meritorious or not. At least I would hope that every plaintiff attorney is doing that. What I referred to earlier as Me Too evidence is exactly this, right? Where you see other people who have gone through the same thing, and whether they filed a claim or not doesn't matter, but they will be useful witnesses.
So we've talked a lot about the plaintiff here because we're reading through her complaint. This is all the evidence that we have as of right now. But I do want to make sure and say, there is another side of this. There is Mr.
Sure.
Beast and his team. Exactly. So what are your thoughts about that? He's come forward and said, okay, no, none of this happened, denying all of the allegations of the wrongdoing. But what are the steps right now for his defense team?
Yeah, the worst fact for him is, like I mentioned, the temporal proximity between termination and leave. That is just an undisputed fact that they're going to really have to work around. Now, what defendants like to do in these situations is point to performance issues. So they'll say she was a poor performer, we wrote her up, she had attendance issues, she had all these other issues, and independent of her leave and her pregnancy or anything else, her gender, we were going to terminate her anyway. That's going to be difficult to prove. The plaintiff will initially show their case, shift the burden to the defendant, and the defendant will have to show, independent of all these things, we would have made the same decision anyway. I don't see that as being the case here.
I mean, it's kind of tough because she was promoted very quickly. She had a huge job. She was working on Instagram. She was doing the vertical videos. And anybody who watches MrBeast, I mean, obviously he has a lot on YouTube, but us all on our phones scrolling, we're looking at those videos all the time. So if she's kind of responsible for that, likely a huge part of his income. And now all of a sudden, we were going to eliminate that position anyway. That is going to be kind of tricky to prove, especially if there is her allegations, if there's a deposition or eventual testimony of other employees, past, present, future, whatever, maybe not future, past or present, who come forward and say XYZ happened to me. So, I mean, if we have the receipts like that saying the 3-week period from when she returned from maternity leave and then she was let go, the position was eliminated, whatever, are there any other steps that he could take as a defendant to kind of, I guess, defend himself?
Well, from his perspective, hopefully there's no internal emails while she was out on leave saying we have to fire her, right? And so the next phase of this case is going to be in the discovery phase where there's an exchange of documents. And that's the first thing I would ask for as the plaintiff's attorney. And that's the first thing I would try to figure out as a defendant to try to not provide. And there might be a court battle over that. But that's basic discovery. And if there are internal communications pointing to that, that's a big problem for MrBeast.
Okay, I have to ask about this just because I'm so curious. Like, for instance, at Law&Crime, we communicate via Slack primarily. I know a lot of people use that, or Teams. We also have emails, but essentially it's mostly Slack. However, I have phone numbers for almost all of my coworkers. I've texted them about things, maybe even called them or FaceTime them, whatever it may be. So could they ask for MrBeast's phone, his actual text from his personal phone, if he is communicating with his employees.
If it's about the case, if it's about the plaintiff, absolutely. Slack, Teams, Zoom, WhatsApp, Telegram, all these things are discoverable. And so people should be careful. They think writing is just, I wrote it in an email or I sent a letter or something like that. No, it's anything that you put digitally into writing as well. So absolutely, the plaintiff's attorneys will be seeking that. Like I said, I anticipate a court battle over that. MrBeast's attorneys will say there's privacy issues, but that's basic first round of discovery.
Oh my God, my stomach just drops thinking about that. People had to go through my texts and I mean, also, we have the allegations of, her being discriminated against because she is a woman, because she's the mother. But then there's also the allegations of this major boys club, the working environment in general, the sexual misconduct, whatever. So if they are granted, let's say, approval to go through his texts or his Slack, could even be emails, whatever it is, they're like, we're looking for this information about, the maternity leave. Did he comment on that? And they stumble across finding something that's pretty incriminating on the, let's say, sexual misconduct side. Can they use that?
Absolutely. There are claims in the complaint that relate to that. If they find something, for example, that has nothing to do with the plaintiff, but it's sexual misconduct related to somebody else, under the Me Too doctrine, they could probably bring that in as well. Again, another court battle about discovery. Those are very fun for us lawyers. That was sarcasm. If it doesn't have anything to do with sexual misconduct, but let's say it's other types of misconduct completely unrelated to this case, that wouldn't come in, but it would be a mental note, obviously, for the attorneys to try to reach out to the person and have a separate case.
Oh, wow. I mean, going through and reading texts, because sometimes I do for work, they're in court docs or whatever. I love it because I'm like, what are people talking about? What is going on behind closed doors? I just want to know all of it. But if I was MrBeast, I would be like, hands off. You cannot have my phone. I don't want that. So, okay, this is my last question for you, Cameron, because we could just talk about this all day. You said you've mentioned this multiple times. We could just go on for hours and hours talking about this, but you've mentioned a couple of times that, that's going to be a court battle. There's going to be a lot going on. Now, this was just filed. What are your thoughts in terms of a timeline here? I mean, if she wants to go to a jury trial, would it be in his best interest rather to settle this outside of a jury trial to kind of have it all thrown away? If they are going in through litigation, how long would that take? I mean, what are your just hypotheses?
Yeah, so 90% or so of cases settle before trial. It takes a pretty unique case to go the full length and to go to trial, even when you have really two people hating each other so much, which happens in litigation. So there's a very, very high chance this ultimately settles. It can settle tomorrow, like you saw with Cassie's lawsuit against Diddy. It can settle, in a year or 2 years. Trial is usually going to happen in the next year and a half to 2 years. And I would be surprised if this ultimately went to trial. Usually one party or the other, after getting the information and seeing the documents, will say, okay, my case is really strong or my case is really weak. And they, decide to settle that way. If they're both entrenched, over the next few years, then yeah, you could see trial. And it would just depend on the likability of the plaintiff versus the likability of MrBeast in court.
I guess we're going to have to wait and see what is going to happen. I mean, based on statistics that you're saying, likely not going to end up in trial. However, we have seen cases go to court, crazy. There was Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard, there's a lot happening. So you never know what could happen. We'll have to have you back on whenever anything is updated. Cameron, thanks for coming on Scandal with us today.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
And that is where today's episode of Scandal leaves us for now. If you like what you saw and want to see more or connect with me on social media, you can find me on places like Instagram. Thanks for watching today's episode of Scandal. As always, I'm your host, Sierra Gillespie, and I'll see you next time.